You know, and allegiance to the flag of the United States and America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3, roll call. Blake?
Here.
Stacy?
Here.
Cecil, are you on?
I am. Thank you.
Tom?
Here.
Ted?
Here.
James? Here. I'm here. Everybody's in attendance tonight. Item 4, approval of minutes of preceding meeting. Do we have any comments, corrections?
Mr. Chairman, on item number 6, 1, 2, third paragraph down into that first sentence versus might be, should be US. Possibly.
Spelling of verses.
Yes. Under item number 6, zoning regulations text amendment. 1, 2, third paragraph, into that very first sentence of that third paragraph. That I'll move for approval.
I'll second. All in favor? Blake?
Yes.
Cecil?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
James? Yes. I vote yes. The word is unanimous. Unfinished business, we have none. Under new business, item 5. PLS 006-22 lot split of 1480 North 82nd Street into 2 lots. Cameron.
Good evening, commissioners. Tonight before you, you have a lot split application. This application is requesting for approval of a lot split of Lot 3 of Z Ranch Estates. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the lot split application for Lot 3 of Z Ranch Estates with the stipulation of approval of the shared driveway access and maintenance agreement. The property owner is Suzanne Barber, and the surveyor for this project is Joe Herring with Herring Surveying. The applicant is requesting approval to split Lot 3 of Z Ranch Estates into 2 separate tracts. Track 3A, and Track 3B. Overall, Lot 3 is approximately 21.5 acres. Track 3A would contain 19.04 acres, and Track 3B would contain 3 acres. Track 3A and 3B would share a common driveway. Both property owners are to share maintenance and access responsibilities. This property is located at 1480 North 142nd Street in Basehor, Kansas. An aerial is provided in the packet showing the parcel. The property is currently zoned RO, suburban residential. You will see in the surrounding zoning to the north, south, and west, it is also RO, suburban residential. To the east, it is Wyandotte County. The legal description is a tract of land in the southeast quarter of Section 1, Township 11 South, Range 22 east of the 6 p.m. City of Basehor, Leavenworth County, Kansas. Staff comments are with the staff. Staff comments have the approval guidelines listed out here. No lot split shall be approved if one or more of the following applies. A new street or alley is needed or proposed unless dedication can be made by separate instrument. Such action will result in significant increase in service requirements or will interfere with maintaining existing service levels. There's less street right-of-way than required by these regulations, and less dedication of additional right-of-way can be made by separate instrument. Any easement requirements have not been satisfied. Such split will result in a lot without direct access to and or less than the required frontage on a street as specified in the City of Basehor zoning regulations. And a substandard size lot will be created according to these regulations or the City of Basehor zoning regulations, except as provided in Section 3-106 herein. Staff finds the lot split to be in compliance with the guidelines established in Section 3-104 of the Basehor subdivision regulations. Staff recommends approval of the lot split application for Lot 3 of Z Ranch Estates with the following stipulation. A shared driveway access and maintenance agreement between the two property owners is to be recorded with the County of Leavenworth. That agreement is also included in your packet.
Any questions, comments? I do have one question about the shared driveway access. I'm curious to know exactly, is that what you've got drawn here?
So on the lot split plan, the gray lines shows the driveway.
So the lot B
Track 3.
has access right off of 142nd.
So they do have the required frontage on that lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are they? Is part of the plan to do away with that direct access onto 142nd or?
The applicant expressed the desire for a shared access driveway in order to maintain costs. The additional driveway would be a substantial cost to the applicant. And there is also a pond located on this parcel, so that driveway would also have to swoop around onto the other side.
Yeah, I know the ponds
Mhm.
on the south side of the drive. That's partially there.
Mhm.
The drawing shows where at one point it takes a sharp turn south
Mhm.
into lot B,
Yes,
and that's the shared.
yes.
So
Oh,
again, I'm sorry, Blake.
no, that's fine.
Again, my question
Mhm.
is the owner of property B Lot B
Mhm.
going to not use access directly onto 142nd, or are they going to use that shared driveway?
They will use the shared driveway. They do not have plans to construct a driveway to have direct access off of 142nd.
They already do. I was out there today. But. Okay. You answered my question. Thank you.
Is there a mutual agreement between the two owners of the properties?
Yes, so Suzanne Barber is splitting this property to, I believe, have a resident live on the track 3B. The shared access and use agreement included in the packet is their agreement between the two property owners that they will share maintenance and access. And then Michelle has reviewed this along with GBA to see if the language is appropriate. Yes.
So they will have something in writing that this is shared easement.
Yeah, so the document that you have that's entitled Shared Access and Use Easement, currently, she's basically granting this to herself because she owns both of those properties. But as you'll see, it gives it in favor of herself, her heirs and assigns. So basically, if she does sell this, if she gifts it to someone, whatever else, it would be giving them that advantage that currently she's frankly giving to herself right now. But that we were requiring that ahead of time because we didn't want there to be a split, a sale, whatever, without that being in place. So they had recorded a version of this, but we found some errors. So we've asked that they have repaired or fixed those errors on this, and they will have to re-record it.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Did you get all your answer?
Yeah, that answers my question.
Blake?
Well, I was just curious. So on the shared access and use easement, is our protocol to check this legal description against a survey and proof it? And is it accurate? And do we feel good about it and all that?
Cameron and I spent some significant time on this last week,
Okay.
and then ultimately the GBAs went over it, ultimately went over it again. So we had what we thought was the correct one, but then we found a couple errors. Then we worked on it. Then it went to GBA and they confirmed it, sent it back for correction.
And you proofed it against a certified survey? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Do they? Has there been a building permit issued for the property?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Been grading done, so just curious.
Mr. Chairman, I have a real quick question.
Sure.
So on the remaining 19 acres, is it possible that that in the future could be further subdivided or platted for residential, a residential subdivision? And if so, how would that property get accessed? Or is that just too far in the future?
That's a great question.
Thank
To my knowledge, no, that would not be permissible due to the way that this lot is currently split. With lot splits, they are only allowed to be split into two distinct lots, and that requires a certain number of footage onto that access road.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Comments? Blake? Tracy? Tom? Ted? Cecil, you got any questions?
No, sir, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. There are no further questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the lot split of Lot 3, Z Ranch Estates, subject to the staff recommendation of, let's see, with the stipulation of approval of the shared driveway access and maintenance agreement.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Cecil?
Yes, sir.
James?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 6, Pacer Comprehensive Plan and Parks Master Plan. Presentation of comprehensive plan. A public hearing is required. Cameron.
Yes, so tonight, actually, we do have Confluence with us who will be presenting the Baser Comprehensive Plan and Parks Master Plan.
Thank you.
I think she's pulling that up. All right. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm Chris Klein. I'm with Confluence. We've been working with the city for the past year and a half, I think, on the comprehensive plan and the Parks Master Plan. We're excited tonight to bring that before this body. We're asking you at the end of this presentation for a recommendation to the city council. But we'll walk through the entire plan. We have gotten input from the public throughout this entire process, as well as the Planning Commission and the Board of Aldermen. And so we've taken those comments into account. For those at home that may be watching tonight as well, there will be an opportunity for you to review the plan at home. You'll see a QR code at the end of this presentation. You'll be able to point your camera at that QR code. It'll take you to a copy of the plan, and you'll be able to review it in detail and provide us with additional input that we can take into account before the city takes action on this next Wednesday night, I believe. So I'll walk through the introductions here for the first part of the plan. With me tonight, if you want to go to the next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about the schedule, all the ground that we've covered leading to today's meeting. We'll cover the plan outline. We'll talk about the guiding principles of the plan. Marshall will talk through the draft chapter review and highlight how the plan is organized, and then we'll talk about next steps at the end. With me tonight are Hank Myers here, who has focused primarily on the Parks Master Plan component, and then Marshall Allen. And Marshall has done a fantastic job with the overall planning effort. Not here with us tonight are Chris Shires, Jane Reesner, and Abby Hebert. And this entire team has worked hand in hand to bring this plan before you this evening. So the scope and schedule, the next slide. We started this back in July of 2021. We've had lots of meetings with the committee, with lots of input along the way with the public. You can see where we are tonight towards the tail end of this process. Here presenting at the Planning and Zoning Committee. This is our public meeting number 3. And then on Wednesday, November 16th, the plan is scheduled to go to City Council with a recommendation from this body. And the next slide. So again, those are the dates. So there's still time to provide us with any final comments or questions that anybody may have. So since last time, I'm going to hand it over to Marshall to talk about some of the comments that we received during this last review process that we did with the joint committee. And we got some additional comments that we wanted to make some edits. And so those were incorporated. Marshall, walk us through that.
Thank you, Chris. As he described, we'll just go through this pretty high level, but showing you what the changes have been since that joint workshop. You'll see a page number listed at the bottom left-hand corner of all these since last time slides. That just gives you reference as to where in the document that you have in front of you these will be found. So we changed slightly the growth and development guiding principle. You had a comment from one of the council members and wordsmith this with him. So you see the change there on the right. Base will grow in a thoughtful and strategic way that expands commercial and residential choices, while also expanding services throughout the community to positively impact the quality of life for residents. So it kind of changes, flips it on its head without negatively impacting, which can be subjective. to just overall having a positive impact on the quality of life of residents while also keeping in mind those services to meet those needs. Next slide. We did have some minor changes to the overall future land use plan. All of them are contained in that red box you see there. The next slide zooms in on what those changes have made. So you see here on the left, we're talking about the areas just south of Highway 2440 along Pinehurst Drive specifically. So on the left, you can see that we went from neighborhood commercial along the south side of Pinehurst Drive. And then that has been amended to high density residential. Understanding that residential and especially of a higher density can act as a really great transition between commercial land uses and then the single family neighborhoods to the south. As we look on the east side of 155th Street, you then see a large area that was designated as high density residential to that community commercial. Again, we're trying to keep those commercial uses up along Highway 2440. And again, similarly, to kind of help with those transition of land uses, instead of a stark contrast between high density residential and single family residential, buffering that with some medium density residential that you see there on that right hand side. Any questions regarding those changes? Okay, next slide. So future land use considerations, we've just added some additional text here. So we got a question about what the target numbers are and what the existing numbers are in terms of detached single family homes. So we, looked at the data that we have and we, included those numbers here in this paragraph that we have approximately about 2,200 detached single family homes. It can be assumed that all of those homes are detached single family units due to the regulations on density within the existing zoning district. Additionally, there are an estimated 256 homes that could be assumed as attached single family within the 2-family R2 zoning district. This allowance on density in this district offer more opportunities for additional units per lot, subsequently producing more attached units. These numbers are estimations based on the best available data set. So we got that question and tried to provide a little bit more context. What's currently going on in Basehor today and how that affects the future land use considerations. Next slide. We had a discussion about accessory dwelling units. So we provide some metrics in this document, some character images, explain what ADUs are, kind of give the benefits of ADUs. They are a more affordable housing option. They can be targeted for residents of all ages, young families, multi-generational households. They typically have a reduced footprint, require fewer materials than conventional single family homes. And they can be a tool in reducing sprawl and build in additional pockets of affordable housing throughout the community. We explained that, ADUs are increasingly found and being considered across the United States, but also describe some of the challenges that can be associated with them and how planning and certain policies can be put in place to address those challenges. Next slide. Again, the basics of ADUs, just describing in more detail what they could be. An apartment over garage, smaller home in a backyard, a basement apartment. Depending on the specific configuration, they can be accessed through the main home or from a different access point altogether. They are legally a part of the same property as the main home and cannot be sold separately. And then some planning considerations for ADUs, updating the single family zoning district regulations to allow for them, allowing updating the single family zoning district, to allow for smaller lot sizes, including lot widths. This approach reduces those lot prices with smaller lot development. That doesn't seem out of scale with the surrounding residential units. Planning policies could include owner occupancy requirement for one of the 2 dwellings, develop dimensional and design standards to ensure neighborhood compatibility, off-street parking requirements, limiting the number of bedrooms and the overall size of these units, and then prohibit ADUs from being used as short-term rentals. So again, these are all just different considerations for the city to look at. Next slide. And then so we've added some action items on goal 2 within the land use chapter. So updating the zoning regulations to allow for accessory dwelling units, updating that single family zoning district to allow smaller lot sizes, consider exploring general requirements that would support a healthy housing market that incorporates ADUs as a viable housing option, and then drafting design standards for ADUs. So trying to provide flexibility, but also a direction to allow these in the future. Next slide. I'm going to hand it over to Hank, who will talk about the department.
Thank you, Marshall. So when we went through and started looking at the future park planning within the Parks Master Plan portion, there was a comment that had come up in regards to incorporating some language in there in regards to additional open space that was being added into neighborhoods. And so we did add some additional text in here. Just that says that additional HOA park and open space facilities and school acreage are provided, but access is limited to the overall community. As you see today, future development dedication should be city controlled to allow for access to all Basel residents. So basically just giving the residents access to any sort of land dedication for parks that is incorporated as part of any new development within the community. Next slide, please. There was also some comment about having a diagram or a plan in there that addresses where future development should occur as far as new parks and open space. We did have some general information in the last set. This is more specific, and it's also tied back to the Basel Active Transportation Master Plan that's already been approved. What this illustrates is just locations for future development of parks and open space, tied to what we talked about previously was with watersheds and incorporating some opportunities for parks to be to provide additional recreational services to residents along those watersheds for regional detention facilities. But this also identifies locations for future neighborhood and community parks as well within the community. Next slide. Also within the Parks Master Plan component was a request for some additional language in regards to incorporating multi-generational facilities into parks to make sure that parks meet the needs of all ages and abilities within the community. You can see the language here, inclusive, that also includes inclusive playgrounds, accessible park features, multi-generational playgrounds, and fitness equipment are all impactful elements to ensure parks facilities can be used by all Basel residents. So this is the language that we've incorporated to accommodate for the request of that information. Next slide, please. And then when we got into the actual goals within the second goal within the Parks and Rec Master Plan, to follow the best practices for park management and funding that supports an efficient park system. Action item 2E was added to explore integration of dedicated parks development for to make sure that the city has access to manage all of that. Next slide. And then as far as stormwater best management practices, there was also a request for some additional language in regards to how to fund these items. And so we dug a little bit deeper into this text and added some language in regards to Federal Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, offers several funding opportunities to help implement various stormwater, watershed, and green infrastructure projects. For example, the 5-Star and Urban Waters Restoration Program offers grants up to $100,000 to restoration programs or offer financial and technical assistance to communities to help these in funding these efforts, ranging from stream bank stabilization, stormwater management, urban tree canopy restoration, and projects to prevent trash and waterways. And Basel should explore options for funding sources to help implement both short and long-term stormwater management projects. Next slide, please. As part of that, we did update the policies for goal number 1 and incorporated language in policy 1F to explore federal, state, and local funding options for environmental preservation and stormwater related projects.
Thank you, Hank. If you recall, chapter 8 in the comprehensive plan discusses 3 sub-area plans throughout the city. We did discuss sub-area plan B and C last time with you during the joint workshop, located on State Avenue, and then the idea of the Interstate Business Park south of Interstate 70. Basehor Town Center sub-area A was still in the works at that time, and so we're going to provide that concept plan to you this evening. Next slide. So here's what we're looking at for the Basehor Town Center. For reference, it's right across the street from City Hall, just east of 155th Street. So you see the different color codes here: yellow, single family residential; orange, medium density residential; the pinkish red color is commercial; and then the green is park and public space. These are consistent with the colors you'll find in the future land use plan. So you'll see along 155th Street a concentration of commercial. The idea that that could be more of an urban downtown feel, street-oriented buildings with screened parking on the east side, screened from 155th Street. Integrated into those commercial areas would be, different open space amenities, pocket parks, obviously areas for outdoor seating if restaurants were to be located in its location. You'll see coming off the parkway extending east of 155th Street that's currently there today. We then transition into an area of garden apartments, which are again oriented more towards the streets and have surface parking to accommodate the residents of those units. Interior to the site, you'll also see what's labeled Area A with those orange buildings. That's going to be a townhome or row home type building, and we'll show a picture of what those might look like on the next slide. Those are also found in the State Avenue sub-area plan as well. So keeping that consistent language and design approach. You'll see larger orange buildings just north of the parkway. Those are looking at senior apartments, the legacy senior apartments to the south, quite popular. And I think we'll see a demand for that type of housing unit in the future in Basehor. So showing an opportunity where there could be a real increase in those types of units here in the community. And then you'll see extending further to the east towards 147th Street, extensive single family properties on these nice curvilinear road networks. Integrated within those would be park spaces, amenity areas. We're trying to reduce the amount of cul-de-sacs. That's a recommendation of this comprehensive plan to promote overall efficiency of the road network and maintenance of the road network. You'll also see towards the south the idea of cluster homes. So that's an opportunity to bring in a little bit more density, smaller units, kind of right up against each other. Could have a communal green space associated with each of them, or collectively, and then the areas in that light green are designated as park and open space, and utilizing that area for potential stormwater retention for a good majority of this property itself. Also, those same row home, townhome type development up along Leavenworth Road and 147th Street. There is some floodplain up there in which this concept avoids building within, but adding a little bit more density up in the northeast corner as well. Real quick, we'll just go on to the next slide. Similarly to the other sub-area plans, we just call out a couple of different elements that the plan highlights. So the townhomes or townhouses and row homes, as I mentioned, some precedent imagery for that. The idea is that they would open up onto a public greenway, public walkways, communal amenity space. They would have the private access driveways and the garage units in the rear. The cluster homes, as I mentioned, smaller homes that orient onto a communal green space, and then the idea of the neighborhood mixed use out along 155th Street. Moderately scaled buildings with first floor commercial or office use, and second story apartments and residential quarters. Does anybody have any questions about this overall approach? Yes.
Well, I don't want to drag this out, Marshall, but back to the previous slide, if you could just give me a picture. So this is conceptual.
Yes.
And so if an investing developer chose to explore this type of strategy, how would that work? Say you get an investor that's got the capital to do the whole thing. And then he would apply for a plat would be approved, let's assume. And then it would be all subject to this plan if we approve this and the city ratifies it. Is that true or no?
I'll start and maybe Chris has anything to chime in with, but this just basically lays out a vision for what the city would like to see at this property. Obviously, the developer at the end of the day is the property owner.
Yeah.
The city would then work with the developer as much as possible to encourage them to build something similar
Yeah.
to this or in this same vein.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of fluctuation and flexibility there.
Yeah.
But generally, the main moves of commercial along 105th Street, transitioning to garden apartments, some level of senior living, and then a good amount of single family is the general big moves here. That the city has a firm foundation in, knowing that it was in the comprehensive.
So the hope would be that we would have a developer that wanted to cooperate with this vision and this plan, not be required to do this. It would all have to go through the regular.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
thank
that's a
you.
fair statement.
I knew that was probably a naive question, but thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we felt like there was of other properties available within the city, this property really lent itself with its size and the location. The fact that downtown Basehor is right here. This was an opportunity to really think about replicating what was here before. And if there was an opportunity for some neighborhood commercial, some kind of commercial activity happening up along 155th Street. And having it supported by some additional density, this was a good location for that. So it establishes a vision that hopefully there's some development interest in making this happen. But the city would have to work collaboratively with whoever that investor might be and what types of things the market will support.
Thank you.
And what's the ownership of this property as it sits right now? Is that just vacant land or I'm trying to think of sometime when I've been back there and I'm not sure I've ever been there before. I'm not familiar with that property.
I believe the city controls most of this property now, if not all of it. So the intent here was to establish a vision and give the city something to potentially work with potential investor or investors that might be interested in moving forward with various pieces of this. Again, this was not based on anybody else's plans, but ours, thinking all of the things that we've received through all the input that we've received throughout this process. Something like this with a mixed use community seemed to make sense for this property and could be a good goal for the city to aim for. And then see what the market would be able to support.
It seems to make a lot. This property that's currently in the city land bank.
Good evening, Leslie Riverola, City Administrator. So the city currently owns 93 acres of property in this location. It's interspersed along Basehor Boulevard and in kind of a unique configuration. We own some property immediately adjacent to the intermediate school, and then we own property on the north side of Basehor Boulevard as well. Some of the property is currently in the Baser Land Bank. Some of the property is just retained by the city of Baser, with the idea that ultimately when that property is transferred to a developer, we would most likely move it to the land bank before that transfer. The city is currently under real estate contract to acquire the remaining balance of this property, which would give the city about 240 acres in total, which is everything that you see highlighted here. And really the city's intention behind including this as a sub area plan is just really to start very preliminarily the discussion around what could potentially happen in this location and different types of uses. If the city ultimately ends up purchasing this property after we conclude all of our due diligence and other reviews, we would do a more formal land use analysis, both for parks as well as potential development. And I would anticipate that would be a collaborative effort between the Planning Commission and also the City Council. Ultimately, the city does not have a desire to be a developer. So making sure that we're finding an appropriate use of balance between land use as well as retaining appropriate areas around the school for park uses and other open space amenities is really critical, and the Planning Commission would play an important role in that. I'm happy to answer any specific questions on this parcel. I know there's a lot of moving parts there, but we do not currently own the whole thing.
I'm curious about the school. If there's, a lot of the housing and the people that would be moving in, that school will have to expand. Is there enough land given there for expansion of Baser Intermediate?
So we work almost on I can't remember if it's annual or biannual basis, but the school district does retain a firm that helps them evaluate enrollment analysis at all of their different facilities. We work very closely with them as it relates to different types of housing, different trends that we're seeing in the market. So this area has continued to be an area that's on the school district's radar as the potential for future development. What that does to that specific facility and enrollment numbers, it's way too early to tell. But we do work very closely with the school district just in general on number of permits issued per year and just demographic trends that are occurring within those permits.
So I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, is that school built in such a way that it could be expandable?
So we actually had a meeting with the school superintendent today, not on this topic, but on a completely unrelated topic. And it's my understanding, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but almost all of their facilities are situated in a way where they're easily expandable. And it's an intentional design philosophy with the school, with the exception of probably a couple of the very maybe Baser Elementary.
In the high school.
Sorry, I stepped on your
No, it's fine. No,
language there.
no, I think that's all good. I just hope, that we synchronize the growth of the school before it gets too late. You know what I mean? Like, if we know that this is gonna be, like all these single family homes, and it's gonna, they're all gonna be, the schools are gonna start bursting. That's why I'm saying it's like, what I'm afraid of is that we get to a point where we're like, holy cow, school's too small. But we get all these houses that are still being built. You know what I mean? That's my concern. So we synchronize that. You know what I mean?
So I think the school district already has a little bit of that happening from a high school perspective. And that's, the train for that left the station when those seniors that start in about 2 years were in kindergarten, based on enrollment numbers. And so, from a city perspective, I'll just tell you permits are significantly down. You'll get to that towards the end of your, meeting. I think this is a very nice concept. I think it's a great vision. I think for something like this to be realized, constructed, and actually have families living in it, if this happens in the next decade, I think that would be pretty aggressive.
No, I agree 100%. No, yeah, I'm not saying we're in the middle of a,
Yeah.
schools are gonna explode. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying as we do get growth.
Yeah.
And things
But-
tend to get exponential. We need to.
Completely agree with you as it relates to our ongoing communications with the school. And I think we have a very good,
Cool.
Yeah, the
Really
city needs
do that.
multifamily housing, and that looks like a great place for it. And the city needs senior places. because we're all getting older and that looks like a great place for it.
Well, and I appreciate that comment. And I know that you served Mr. Owen on the comprehensive plan committee or Parks Master Plan Committee. And, you know, that has been one of our unique opportunities is we've heard from the community that they would like to see additional housing opportunities, but finding an appropriate location for that is certainly a challenge. This, at least just from first glance, looks like it may be an opportunity to explore some of that more dense housing without impacting a tremendous amount of neighborhoods.
Exactly. It's something that is a long range plan, and anybody that would be relocating in the area would know that there was going to be these kinds of amenities in the area.
Absolutely. Any other questions, or I'll turn it back over to the folks who were making their original presentation.
Any questions, Cecil?
No, sir, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
So, oh, Chris.
Okay, I'll cover the plan outline. So next slide. The plan's organized into several different chapters. There's the introduction, the community profile, the public input summary that we've heard throughout the process, the land use plan, Parks and Recreation chapter, natural resources and stormwater management, the transportation plan, the sub-area plans that you just heard, several of those discussed, and then implementation at the very end. Go to the next slide. So the way that's broken down, the chapter is there at the top. So for instance, Parks and Recreation chapter, there'll be goals listed under each chapter. So for Parks and Recreation, this is goal number 2. And then there's policy actions or policies and action items that occur underneath each goal to support that goal happening. So this provides kind of a blueprint for the city and your city staff, for council, for planning commission to use this document as a guide when future applications come in and or future grant opportunities, future things that affect the community, change how the community is providing services. All those things could be used as a part of this plan to refer back to the plan and see how does that action that we're being asked to take support the things that the community really wanted to see happen long term. So think of this as your blueprint, things to look for. Hey, this new thing that's being proposed, that was policy 2C. We all said that something like that should happen. Here's a way of implementing that, and it addresses one of our action items. So that's kind of how the chapters are organized. And then the guiding principles themselves, I'll cover these. There's 6 guiding principles. These support and guide the formation of the plan and the goals, policies, and action items. So I showed you an example from the Parks and Recreation chapter. That same type of thing happens in each one of these 6 guiding principles. They include community character, housing and neighborhoods, parks and recreation, sustainability, community connectivity, and growth and development. You can go to the next slide. So there's a statement for each one. The community character, Basehor will continue to maintain its high community pride as it grows through its investment in quality of life improvements such as city beautification, parks and trails, and amenity expansion. For housing and neighborhoods, Basehor will preserve and enhance existing neighborhoods while also thoughtfully expanding housing choices to serve residents of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. Community connectivity. Basehor will improve community connectivity by enhancing the safety of its roads and intersections for all user types, as well as through sidewalk and trail expansion. And we heard loud and clear throughout the process, everybody wants trails and sidewalks. Parks and recreation. Basehor will continue to invest in its great park and recreation system, while also adding new park and recreation facilities and programs and trail connections. And then sustainability. Basehor will integrate all aspects of sustainability into decision-making, policy formation, and actions to create a resilient and healthy community for Basehor residents of today and tomorrow. And then growth and development. Basehor will grow in a thoughtful and strategic way that expands commercial and residential choices while also expanding services throughout the community to positively impact the quality of life for residents. So all of those things are covered in the plan. If you're at home and haven't seen this or participated in that process, please, at the end of the meeting tonight, you'll have a chance to look online and read through those chapters. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Marshall to go through the chapter review.
Thanks, Chris. And we're gonna do this pretty quickly because we went in depth with this with you all at the joint workshop. So we're gonna give a high level overview of what each chapter is going to include. And as Chris mentioned, we provide the link and the QR code in this presentation itself. It's still on the project website. And definitely encourage all residents to view it and to provide any comments as we head towards the city council meeting on the 16th. So chapter 1, that introduction, this is describing, what the purpose of this comprehensive plan, how it can be used, what those project phases are that this plan was developed through. It provides that schedule that we followed. It describes what that planning horizon year is. So we're looking at 2040. Understanding that a new comprehensive update will happen prior to 2040 for another horizon year off into the future. We describe what that planning boundary is. So looking at, areas that are easily or practically sewerable within the next, 20 plus years, and how land use within that is important. We give the outline of the plan. We describe the existing plans that have already been adopted with the city and how those have provided a framework and a foundation for this comprehensive plan. And we provide those guiding principles as well. Chapter 2 is that community profile. So we discuss the base map that is the foundation for all the mapping that you find in this document. We provide that regional context of how Basehor is situated within the larger Kansas City metro, brief history of the community, the trends, the data. We go into extensive demographic profile, data and analysis, and then the economic profile as well. So these are all, moment in time at the creation of this plan and form much of the predictions and the policies associated with this comprehensive plan. Chapter 3 is a comprehensive summary of the public input that we received. So we describe all those touch points that we had with the public, the various public meetings, the stakeholder interviews, the open houses, as well as the interactive engagement website that has been active this entire time. And it gives all the different input that we received from all those touch points. And again, how that has then been utilized in the formation of the policies of this plan, because ultimately this is a plan for the community. So that information was extremely valuable. Chapter 4 is where we discuss land use. So we review the existing land uses in Basehor today. Again, we provide that planning boundary and some of those key future land use considerations. We describe the population projections and the residential demand estimates leading up to the horizon year. Describe those future land use categories, the all-important future land use plan, which is probably what this comprehensive plan is going to be referenced for the most, and then the land use goals and strategies. Real quick, we'll go into some of the elements in this chapter on the next slide. Again, we provide that existing land use composition, showing what's out there today. Next slide. We describe what that future land use plan is for. It is that physical guide for growth and development within the community. It does set that preferred development pattern as developed by the steering committee and the public. It does serve as that basis for determining appropriate zoning. So as zoning amendments and applications come to you, this is a plan that should be referenced each and every time, and then amended as necessary to keep consistent with the zoning of the community. Like I said, should be amended and then creates a series of future land use categories. These are those categories: agriculture, open space, and greenways. That would be the least dense category in this future land use plan. The state residential, so large properties, minimum 1 acre lots with single family residential. Low density residential, think single family development. stipulates there 5 dwelling units per acre and then also includes language for ADUs. On the next slide, we then go to medium density residential, townhomes, row houses, cottage home developments. High density, that's where you get 12 or more dwelling units per acre. Could be townhomes, could be row homes, garden apartments, that sort of thing. Neighborhood mixed use, more urban density, multi-story buildings, combination of retail, residential and office uses. Buildings should be between 2 to 4 stories in height in that category. On the next slide, we go to neighborhood commercial, so combinations of retail, office, medical. These are located at major nodes throughout the community. And sites of generally 1 to 10 acres should be considered for this use and accommodate pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Community commercial is designed for larger scale commercial activities, so more of your big box retail, that sort of thing. Business park, office complexes, light industrial uses. As mentioned, that would be, that's located down along Interstate 70 as one of the sub area plans. Finally, parks and recreation, pretty self-explanatory there, and public, semi-public, government buildings, libraries, churches, schools in that category. So here you see the future land use plan extending out to that planning boundary, which does extend past the current city limits. Again, this is areas that are potentially sewerable in the future. So looking at what that development is, you see, 61% low density residential, about 20% estate residential, and then smaller and smaller percentages as you go down. Again, this was all developed with the help of the steering committee and public input, and we think reflects a good balance of what the community would like to see in the future. This is just a closer up view. It's a little pixely. I apologize for that, but closer up view of the northern half of the community from 2440 north. And the next slide has the southern half of the community. And you see there the business park located south of Interstate 70. And then some opportunities for more dense residential and commercial developments on the other side of Interstate 70. I'll pass it over to Hank real quick.
Chapter 5 is where we really dig into the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This provides us a review of the parks, trails, and recreation today. It is a summary of the public input we received in regards to parks and recreation and what people wanted to see within the community. It also covers the level of service analysis that I discussed earlier, and then identifies future parks, trails, and recreation planning, where those should be, what could be included. And also the existing facilities, what are some improvements that still could be made. And then finally, the Parks and Recreation goals, policies, and action items. Chapter 6 is the natural resources and stormwater management chapter. This is really a review of the natural resources as they stand today within your community and the policies that you have. It starts to establish stormwater management and best management practices, and then also addresses the natural resource goals, policies, and action items. And then chapter 7 is the transportation section. This is a review of the future streets plans. This is also a review and incorporation of the Basel Active Transportation Master Plan, which has already been adopted and is being incorporated as part of this document, and recognizing that moving forward. And then it also is a summary of the goals, policies, and action items related to transportation within the community.
And then just finally, as mentioned, the sub area plans is chapter 8, as we tonight, the Basehor Town Center concept. And as we discussed in the past joint workshop, the State Avenue commercial concept and the interstate business park concept. This chapter discusses why sub areas are important, why this plan includes them, and again, provides that vision for those 3 locations.
And finally, you can view the entire plan online. So this is the QR code that anybody can use. It'll be placed on the interactive website that we have. So anyone can go online, review the entire document, provide comments to us. So the entire web address is there. I'm not going to read that all off, but it's a long sentence. The scan code works pretty well. And then next slide, next steps. So we are planning to be at City Council on November 16th. So we thought we would give everybody through the weekend. So on Monday, the 14th, we'll look online and see what other comments have come through. We'll review that with staff. We'll see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted in this before we take this to City Council. And so we just ask that caveat with what we're presenting tonight. If this body feels confident and comfortable making a recommendation to the City Council with the understanding that on Monday, we'll look through the comments, and if there's any little adjustments or a typo or something else, we'll make that final adjustment and make that part of the presentation for the City Council. So with that, thank you again for the opportunity to be part of this entire process with the community. We had great engagement from residents throughout. You're experiencing a lot of change. We think that this plan is going to help provide a blueprint for you to make really good, informed decisions based on a shared vision and direction for your city. And we're grateful to be part of that process with you. And we're available to answer any questions that you have.
Could we go back to that slide with the QR code on it? That Confluence dot my social sentence right there, that'd be a live link. So if I was on my iPad, I could touch it, or if I was on my computer, I could put the cursor on and click
Right.
and do the same thing as the.
Yes. Yeah, you can type in www
QR code.
and then the rest of it. Yes.
Okay. I know that we've had a couple of opportunities for the public to show up, and I know we considered the amount of people that showed up to be a pretty good amount of people, but I think it's a very small percentage of the population of Basehor that actually came to these things and looked at it. I think the majority of people, are busy. They don't have time to have time to get into that. I was wondering if there's any possibility that we could get that onto the Basehor community website somehow, or on Facebook or something.
Just so somebody goes to the city site.
I think it'd be a good idea for the public to be able to get in and see this easily.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Owen. The link is a link on our Facebook page. So if you go to our Facebook page, we actually replaced our city's website with this link to encourage residents to go to that. Also, when we post recaps of public meetings, we include this link as well. So.
Good. I'd like to make sure that everybody in the city has an opportunity to see this, because, we have invested a lot of money and a lot of time to do this. And I think it's been an excellent investment. I think we put our money in the right place. I think we put our time in the right place. A lot of us have spent a lot of time on this. A lot of you guys have put a lot of professional time in on it, as well as the people from the city. But I think it'd be really good to make sure that anybody that try to push this out there so everybody knows it's out there and can take a look at it and see what we're doing and see where we're planning to go and see what we're doing. I don't know if we want to do that prior to it being approved by the city council, providing the city council's going to approve it, which if I was a betting man, I'd put money on it, but and in the planning commission, I'd say there's a pretty good chance we're going to approve it. But I think it'd be a good idea to get that information out there so everybody knows what's going on. I think people could potentially get excited about some of the stuff that's going to be happening, and I just think it would be a good idea to have as much inundate the public with it as much as possible. Thank you.
Yeah. Agreed.
I have a real quick question. I apologize. I should have asked this a long time ago. I'm gonna go back to page 104. I'm gonna make this real quick, because I don't think I heard it correctly. But just to refresh everyone, it talks about additional open spaces, additional HOA park and open space facilities, and school acreage are provided, that access is limited the overall community. I get that part. Here's what I'm not resonating. Future development dedication should be controlled to allow access to all Basehor residents. What's going on in my mind is if someone wants to go in and do a homeowners association and they have their own basketball court or pool, the way I'm reading this is everyone in Basehor gets access to that. Where's my disconnect?
I think the intention of what was requested originally was that there's been a number of different developments that do have just green open space that have been developed as part of a residential community. And were not dedicated to city ownership. And so they have private access. They don't open it up to the public. And I think the intent of this was to say, if a developer were to come in and dedicate some open space, they would dedicate it to city ownership to allow for all residents to have access to that land.
And it'll be a combination. I mean, there will be some private facilities that could be a pool complex or a tennis court or something like that. There's going to be still some private amenities, but the intent would be that some of those larger parcels of property that could benefit the entire community. Let's say there's some low area that might be in or near a floodplain and is probably not as developable. Does that make sense to dedicate to the city in terms of maybe a future trail connection that might allow and improve some of the connectivity needs for the community long term? So I think that gives city staff something to work with and talk with those developers that are thinking about another project where they might want to do private facilities and how they can dedicate or contribute to the future community vision for a more connected and series of open spaces throughout the entire community. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, my only other comment is I completely agree with Commissioner Owens and the excitement about this. Well done.
Ted, you have anything?
Nope, Tom took mine.
That's all right.
That's right. No, as long as that's like, because I read it like, HOA parks will be open, as long as we're not retroactively going back and seizing HOA parks while people who live there still pay the bill.
Yeah.
All right, that's all. Okay, no, good enough. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I commend those who were a part of this. It's tremendous.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Great job. I think I agree with everything that's been said tonight. Well, only question I have is I noticed the public notice was October 13th. Was that the only public notice that was published in the Leavenworth Times for this meeting tonight?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did also include it in our e-news and on our website as well.
Okay,
There is also a public notice for the meeting with the city.
for the city council. Yeah, thank you.
Cecil, you got anything? Question?
I too just like to say job well done. Thanks for your hard work and something is what much needed.
Thank you.
And I just have one last question. It's kind of like about the elephant in the room, or maybe the elephant that's flying down the middle of Basehor.
Marshall, this question's coming for you. Is that what you mean?
The elephant that's flying down Basehor at breakneck speed. One of the comments on page 39 from the public was major arterials are high traffic and difficult barriers to cross. We have a difficult barrier to cross that cuts Basehor right in half, and that's State Avenue, 2440. I know the city has communication with KDOT, but I would like to recommend that the city's communication with KDOT, we bring them into what we're planning to do with the comprehensive plan, so they can make sure that, or so we can coordinate with them what is going to happen on State Avenue. I know that there was a Facebook post a while back about K7 and parallel, the intersection there. And there were a lot of people complaining about KDOT, the way that they're planning that out. And I noticed that the mayor made a comment that it's KDOT, you can't do anything about it. And granted, you know, the city of Baser shouldn't be out there planning highways or anything like that. KDOT's the pros, they know what they're doing and all that kind of thing. But I think the city of Baser needs to coordinate this very closely with KDOT, because that section of 2440 that basically divides Baser in half is going to be a problem with Baser's growth forever. And if we can partner with them, with KDOT, so that we can let them know what our feelings are and what we need, perhaps they can revise their plans to more coincide with what we need them to do. I don't know if that's even possible, but I think the communication would be a very good idea.
We agree 100%.
That's
you.
part of why we have all the transportation components. We try to document what the community said they wanted from a connectivity and safety standpoint. That it's not just all about vehicles. We run into this all the time with communities that are bisected by highways. And how do we improve that connectivity so it doesn't become so divisive? And we do our best to try to document all those things so that the community has the tools and the ammunition that you need to go speak to the DOT and say, this is more than just about getting cars from point A to point B.
Yeah.
There's other goals here in mind, and it's a balancing act. And I think the DOTs are understanding that those things are changing from the way they used to do things to today. So we're hopeful that this is a good next step in that development process with the DOT.
Yes, and having lived west of here for a number of years, and Baser was just that place where it slowed me down getting to work every day. I understand the importance of being able to get through here quickly on your way to work in the morning and not be delayed by a bunch of stoplights and things like that. But if you're if you're living here, there is a different, you have a much different perspective than all those, thousands of cars that drive through here every day.
Chairman, can I have one element?
Sure.
It's real quick. Lots of high density residential in this plan. And and my interpretation again is that this is a concept. So if we have something designated high density residential, we're not locked into it, right? If a developer wants to come in and do something different, we can, this is not like, okay.
Yeah, the way these always work is this is a guiding plan, but if another idea comes forward and the city takes into account everything that's in here as your blueprint and says, maybe we should consider something different because of other factors, you always have that ability to modify the plan.
Fair enough.
And it would come to us. So,
Right, exactly.
I would like to thank you all very much. Did a great job as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Hearing plans, sounds like the city's going to have their hands full with creating requirements for ADUs, pursuing grants for EPA or from EPA. I know you're going to have your hands full. Have we had comments, negative comments about Tomahawk Park at all from people living right close to it? I wouldn't, not that I'm aware of, but I was just curious if the city and staff had received anything.
Specifically of folks that live in that area?
Yeah, I guess.
No, they're not.
Okay. Just curious. If I read this right, we need to have a public hearing open and so no further comments or questions from planning commissioners. I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we open a public hearing.
I second.
All in favor, Cecil,
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yes, public hearing is now open. Do we have anyone that would like to speak to the comprehensive plan issue? Nothing? Hearing nothing, hearing none, on entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor? Like,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Cecil.
Yes.
I vote yes, public hearing is closed. I will entertain a motion on item 6, Baser Comprehensive Plan and Parks Master Plan.
I would like to propose that we approve the Baser Comprehensive Plan and Parks Master Plan.
Second.
All in favor, Cecil?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
I vote yes. Plan is approved 7-0. Thank you all very much. Item 7, open agenda. We have none. Item 8, reports from special committees. We have none. Item 9, planning director's report.
Yes, Cameron Ewing, City Planner, City of Baser. As you can see on number 9, single-family residential year-to-date for October is 2 single-family residential permits is compared to 12 from last year. Multifamily residential permits, 1 for the month of October compared to 0 of last year.
Thank you. Anything else?
That is it from me.
Item 10, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, Blake,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Cecil.
Yes.
I vote yes. Meeting is adjourned.
We're taking out of that.